Boundaries, and not just boundaries with other people, but what I really want to get into is boundaries with yourself and boundaries that you set against the eating disorder. So, what I mean by this is having a clear set of boundaries that you are not going to allow the eating disorder to cross. And one of the first things that we have to do in eating disorder recovery, in my opinion, is separate ourselves from the disorder. So I like to label this as the eating disorder being enemy number one. Okay, the eating disorder is enemy number one. So you are separated from the disorder. Now get really clear with what you want. What do you want from recovery? How do you want to be? What life do you want to live as a recovered person? And just the state that you want to operate in and be in. And you don't have to have all the answers for that. I didn't, and believe me, I know that it can be scary to not know who you're going to be outside of recovery. And that was a truth for me. I was really afraid of who I would be without having the eating disorder because it had been with me for so long. To have that component removed from me was scary because, I had also given so much time and dedication, a lot of my mental and physical energy, obviously, to the eating disorder. So I didn't have like a relationship with myself or hobbies, for example. I didn't have my own hobbies. I didn't have things that I enjoyed. I had a ton of things that I did because the eating disorder wanted me to do it and the eating disorder enjoyed it, and you could kind of label it as hobbies, but they weren't really my hobbies. They weren't really what Zariah wanted. And I had to learn all of that, which was great, right? Because although it can be scary, you still get to be an active participant in creating the life that you want to be living, as well as creating the relationship that you want to have with yourself. And that's why this YouTube channel is actually called Shine Bright Life, because as I was going through recovery and as I was moving into creating and enhancing the relationship with myself, where I was becoming the love of my life and becoming my own best friend and teammate, I was outlining all of that as, okay, I know I'm not this yet, but I want to be bright. And what does bright mean to me? So there's like a whole lot of things that bright means to me, but it was basically like, okay, Z, I know we're not here yet, but these are things that we can start to create and strive for. And I know that we can get to this place. So it's like, yeah, I can totally do that. And back to having boundaries with the eating disorder and, first separating like what you want, then you go to what the eating disorder wants. So we got to get really clear on things. And this is where we utilize self-awareness. So just being able to sit down, pen and paper, go to your journal and just literally write it out. What do I want? And then what does the eating disorder want? And for me, the way I went about that was, I am love, right? So with my recovery, I wanted everything of, loving myself and having a relationship with myself where I could trust myself, respect myself. I didn't neglect myself. I would have compassion for myself. I would love myself. All of those things. That is what I wanted. That is the life that I wanted to create. That's the life I wanted to be living. The eating disorder did not want me to trust myself. It did not want me to validate myself. It did not want me to have compassion for myself. It did not want me to love myself. It did not want me to value myself. It did not want me to respect myself. The list goes on and on. So get with your piece of paper and your journal and write down what you want and then what the eating disorder wants. So that way you can see it's very clear, right? You have separation of self and the eating disorder. And remember, eating disorder is enemy number one, and we are not fighting ourselves, okay? Like, I want you to know that you are not fighting yourself. If you're going to be fighting anything, if you want to use that terminology, you are fighting the eating disorder, because again, it is enemy number one. So let's go back to our list, okay? We have our things that we want and we have the things that the eating disorder wants. Now let's create a couple of boundaries. So when the eating disorder says, for example, I want you to exercise, what's your boundary? I'm trying to separate from the eating disorder. So when we do recovery-based behaviors, remember, it is the exact opposite thing of what the eating disorder wants. So when the eating disorder says, I want you to exercise, you have to do the exact opposite thing and not exercise. So your boundary for that could be, I want to rest and recharge and allow my body to heal. Okay, that was one of mine. So here's another one. The eating disorder says, I don't want you to eat that thing, whatever that thing is. Okay, here's your boundary. Remember, recovery-based behavior, you have to do the exact opposite thing of what the eating disorder wants. So your boundary is, when you tell me not to do something, I am going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to eat the thing you don't want me to eat, because I am going to prove to myself and eliminate fear. And it's not going to be all at once. I mean, believe me, I know I had fear of foods. I had fear of certain types of foods. I had fear of weight gain. I had fear of all of the things. But part of eating disorder recovery is teaching yourself that there is no reason to be afraid of these things. And it's the eating disorder, right? The eating disorder wants you to be afraid of these things because, well, if you continue to be afraid of the things, then you're not going to do the stuff that you need to do to get you recovered. You can't implement any recovery-based behaviors when you are letting the eating disorder run the show and dictate your life based off of its rules, regulations, and really, coming down to it provoking fear and anxiety within you when you don't do what it says and when you do the exact opposite of what it says. And just remember, when we create a boundary within ourselves, we do have control over that boundary. So we get to really show up for ourselves and treat ourselves with compassion, respect, and love, and basically just go forth with holding that boundary. And here's another example of a boundary. Okay, so the eating disorder says, I want you to keep me a secret. And your boundary is, I want love and support, and I want to be supported while I'm going through this. So you do the exact opposite of what the eating disorder says, and you tell someone, you reach out, you get help, you start the process of not being alone, because the eating disorder wants you to keep it a secret. It wants you to be alone. It wants you to think that no one cares about you, that you're not sick enough, that you are not worthy of recovery. That's the eating disorder. That's what the eating disorder wants. And remember, go back to what you want, inherently what you want. And for me, that was, I want love, right? I want to be loved primarily from myself. I want this relationship where I enjoy being with myself, where I don't wake up in the morning and feel dread about all the things that I have to do to keep the eating disorder happy. So just go back to your core values. And if you don't know what those are yet, that's totally fine. You get to figure that out along the way. And what I am telling you is that was very beneficial for me to start creating the relationship that I have with myself and enhancing it during eating disorder recovery. Because eating disorder recovery and full recovery is so much more than just being weight restored, right? It's so much more than that. And I've seen a lot of times where people enter treatment programs and they're in an inpatient setting and then they get discharged because they've met a certain weight. And it's like, but everything is still going on up here. We didn't work through any of this. So the eating disorder is still very rampant and intertwined. And just because somebody might look recovered, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are, because those patterns and what we have done for the eating disorder that we do time and time again, it's just, they are so easy. They're so easy to do. And that doesn't mean that they're right to do. It means that our brain likes to take the path of least resistance. And even though something isn't good for us and we know, we know it's not good for us, it doesn't matter. It feels comfortable. There's familiarity there. So that's one reason why there's such a high rate of relapse, because we're not treating what's going on up here. We're not creating new neural pathways. We're not implementing the new recovery-based behavior and really in addition, creating the relationship with ourselves where we are separating us from the eating disorder. So we have to keep that front and center when we're going through recovery. And I know that this all sounds like a lot, but I mean, believe me, you can do hard things, and recovery is a journey. You know, we don't just go to bed one night, have these thoughts, and then wake up the next day and go, oh my God, I'm recovered. Like, no, it takes a lot of work, it takes time, but we are worth all of the effort in the world. And you know when the right time to recover is? Like literally like right now. Like right now is the right time to recover. The eating disorder is going to tell you that now's not a good time because of whatever. It could give you a million reasons. But here's the thing, the eating disorder is never going to give you a right time to recover. That's not its goal. So we have to get really clear on what the eating disorder's goal is. And the disorder's goal is to always be with you. Okay. So, and when you are creating and thinking about the life that you want to have without the eating disorder, I want you to fill it with things that just make your heart smile and fill you up with joy. So going back to when the eating disorder tells you that, no, you need to keep me a secret, and you're like, I want to tell, no, recovery-based behavior, I need to tell someone. And I'm not saying you have to tell the world. Tell somebody that you trust and that you know can help you with recovery and the process of getting recovered. And here's the thing, this person that you tell, they might not even know that you've had an issue. Like, you could be doing a really great job in keeping it a secret, and this is just how you've always been, and they just think this is how you are and who you are, and they don't see anything wrong. But you know deep down there is an issue. And so this could be a total surprise to them, right? And that's okay. That doesn't mean that you can't tell them. And it also means that just if they don't understand and they're like, you know, just completely aloof to the situation, what I did in that case, because my husband was just like, what? You know, like I don't, what do you mean? I don't have any experience in this, and I'm kind of blindsided. And when I didn't have the words to verbalize like how I was feeling, or I couldn't really explain things to him. It was weird. I couldn't verbalize it. So what I would do is find videos or podcasts or something where the eating disorder was really being explained, and it was basically like me talking, because remember, this is a disorder, so we are very similar, okay? Like, as much as we like to think that we're the only ones that have this, and you know, our eating disorder likes to make us think that we are alone and nobody else is going through this, that's not factual at all. So I would send him videos or podcasts, and I'm like, listen to this. This is exactly how I feel. This is exactly how I have felt, you know, just trying to get him like a little bit more familiar. And then that would kind of help start the process and set the ground floor of like, this is what I need. And when I act like this, it's because, and you know, here's the main goal that I want to accomplish, and just kind of starting that conversation. Because again, when I told him that I had an eating disorder, he was just kind of like, oh my God, what? I had no idea, that kind of stuff. So if you're choosing to tell someone and it's, you know, if it blindsides them, then there are things that you can do to help them understand where you're coming from. Because I'm sure we're all very familiar with, you know, some people who don't understand, and their words of advice are, well, just eat. And it's like, okay, again, we're missing the point, because I'm afraid of food. Like, what do you want me to do with that? You know what I mean? Like, sure, except I'm terrified of the thing that you want me to do to get me to recovered. So there's obviously a lot up here that has to go on, and there's a lot that I need to work through to get it to the point where I'm not afraid of food, to get it to the point where I'm not afraid of weight gain, and just ultimately like where I can get back to the point of trusting myself. And maybe I've never trusted myself. So what does that look like? Like knowing that I can trust my body, that I can trust my body to know that it knows what to do with the nutrition that I take in. You know, we have to give our bodies credit. So anyways, I just want to remind everyone that yes, we do have boundaries externally. We have boundaries with people, right? But we also have internal boundaries. And an internal boundary when you're going through eating disorder recovery are going to be boundaries that you create so that when the eating disorder tries to cross those boundaries, or make you do what you know is not going to get you to a recovered state, that you're equipped to be like, nope, we're not doing that. This is a boundary, and I'm not crossing that boundary. I've made that promise to myself. Okay, so if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you think it could help someone, go ahead and share it. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. My information is in my YouTube description. And I just want to remind everyone again, everyone is capable of full recovery. You are worth all the effort in the entire world. And guess what? We all get to take part in creating the life that we want to be living. So more to come, and I hope you have a great night. Bye.